There's a new bar in town. Welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms, where the banter flows like wine and the topics are as fresh as an ice-cold pint. So pull up a chair, grab yourself a glass, and welcome your hosts, The Brood!
Hello and welcome to the first Turnbuckle Arms Swift Half episode. I'm joined by Big Chocky T.
Hello, how's it going?
This is our first Swift Half episode. What we're doing, we're looking at some individual topics rather than having the whole brood involved, just a couple of us. And we're hopefully trying to stick to 30-minute time limit, otherwise the name doesn't really work. But so the first subject we're going to tackle is like a progress review of AEW.
Mm-hmm.
Chris is our resident AEW guy, and I wrote an article a while back for BigJohnny.com about my first impressions of AEW. So this is kind of like the next step in my commentary about it. So with the time limit in mind, let's get cracking on. I want to start with something that Chris and I have touched base on previously, and definitely one of my AEW highlights, and that's Hangman Adam Page.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, you know, I didn't really know him before AEW. Obviously, he was in the championship picture early on, and now he's tag team champion. And I think what they're doing with him and his character and his actually in-ring performance is absolutely amazing. It's definitely one of the highlights week in, week out for me. So what do you think about Adam Page?
Yeah, he's certainly one of the kind of breakout stars, let's say. The fact that they position him against Jericho, I was just thinking this morning that the pressure that must have been on that young man in that first real main event, you know, Double or Nothing, you know, it was some pressure to put on him. I think what they've done is amazing with him because, as I mentioned before, you've got a character there who's kind of between the lines, bit of an arsehole, you know, let's say borderline alcoholic, and yet the fans are still rooting for him. And what they're doing with him constantly is just teasing the tension between either his tag team partner Kenny Omega, you know, and the Young Bucks and the rest of the Elite. And that's the storyline that's been going kind of, you know, on being the Elite as well for some time. So yeah, I think for a man his kind of age and his talent, it's fantastic. And I know, I'm not sure what you think, Matt, but originally, you know, I wanted Adam Page to actually win the inaugural, you know, AEW championship. And at the time, I remember thinking, is this the face you want leading forward? Later on, I thought, yeah, maybe I was wrong for the good of the product. Jericho was the wise choice. But, you know, do you think at the time it would have been a good decision to have him win that title?
I think so, yeah. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff where they want to set themselves aside from WWE and everything. So I think by putting it on to someone like that probably would, you know, in a lot of ways would have worked, and it would have kind of set that standard early on. But obviously, from a commercial point of view, and obviously everyone knows how good Jericho is at everything. You know, it does make sense really for them to have gone that route. So. But I think it's quite interesting because obviously like he had that opportunity. Then it was like the Diamond Ring tournament as well, where he lost that to MJF as well. Yeah. So it's quite interesting that they've kind of positioned him in these opportunities, but he's kind of fallen short at the last hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's like, you know, he's definitely like a staple of what they're doing and everything, and it's really interesting to see where they go with the whole Elite thing, especially what they've been doing the last few weeks with. Between him and Omega as well, so it is going to be quite interesting to see where they go with it, and it's definitely something that, you know, for every week.
You know, you're quite right, because his failings have played really well into the storyline, and I can see a situation where perhaps a heel Omega as champ is challenged by Adam Page, and he gets his retribution at last, but it's so much more personal than his other feuds, you know, and I'd like to see that really. He has to win it at some point, you know, and I think he will. Or maybe him against MJF, you know, if he ever takes the title. I'm praying that does happen. But I suppose the real question we get on today is who the hell is going to dethrone, you know, Jon Moxley? And perhaps we'll touch on that. But the way he's been handled as champ already is quite interesting. But yeah, we'll get back to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean that's actually the next topic on my list to bring up. Really, is the AEW Championship. So, you know, like in terms of what they've done with it, with the the limited number of title holders they've had so far. How they book those champions. So what are your thoughts on how they've utilised that?
Yeah, they've only had 4 title switches so far during the year, and every belt that is, I mean. And mostly it's the Women's Championship that's changed hands. But yeah, I think obviously one thing that they should have learned from WWE and WCW is that no one wants hot potato title belt switching. No one wants that. And one point I want to make about Cody's TNT championship, although it essentially is like a TV championship, I suppose, I'm not sure about it being defended week in, week out. And I believe next week actually he's involved in a tag match for once. I do think there's something about once in a while seeing the champion come out at a pay-per-view to defend it, is much better than seeing it weekly. I don't want that belt to become devalued, because you kind of know that Cody's probably not going to lose it on TV either. It's probably going to be at a pay-per-view where it happens. So in terms of the TNT championship, that's my thoughts on that. The women's championship, we'll get on to the women's division, but I think Shida's a good champion at the moment, and everyone they've had so far I think is decent. The tag champs, again, interesting who they went with, and I will touch on the tag team division because I've got a list as long as my arm about how many tag teams are in AEW. But in terms of the actual main heavyweight championship, they've done the right thing. They've only had 2 champs so far. I do think Moxley was the right person to dethrone Jericho. How he's been since, maybe he's looking a bit too kind of invincible at the moment. Maybe the way that Brian Cage was made to throw in a towel, it made sense from a storyline point of view, but I'm not sure about some of these big guys losing, like Brody Lee as well, to Moxley. I don't want him to become just invincible John Cena circa 2000 whenever. No one wants to see that really. But I'm not sure what you think, Matt, about Mox as the current champion and how long he can continue to be that.
Yeah, I agree with what you said there. It is like they do seem to be booking him as almost invincible. And using the John Cena model that he gets beaten up every week and put to the sword and everything. But then when it comes to the title match, then he manages to pull it out the bag, one way or another. So it's I don't dislike John Moxley at all. I liked him as Dean Ambrose, I liked him in the Shield. He's a talented guy, he's charismatic, but I'm not sure, if his time's up really already. But then if he loses the title, then where does he go from there? So it's such a big step at the moment, just for one show a week as well. So it's you got a lot of big names to sort of fit in and to make the most out of. So so I think it will be quite interesting. I agree that, like what you said earlier on about sort of like MJF being a future champion. I think that's probably been on the cards early on, but again, the way they've booked him, the way they've utilised him, even when he's not wrestling, and I think that's probably the biggest thing with him is that he doesn't have to wrestle to get over. Going back, like one of my AEW highlights would be like the verbal spat between him and Jericho. It was just absolute brilliance with like no wrestling involved whatsoever, and it was just brilliant. And I think if you can kind of carry on with that, especially like what he did this week with sort of like the state of wrestling address and stuff like that, it's a really good way of building the character and and making people dislike him but also like him at the same time. So it's so I think that is quite good. But I think sort of John Moxley's days are numbered. I mean, he's got a match against Darby Allin next week, and I might get proven wrong, but in my mind, I don't see the title being at risk in that match.
No.
Exactly. With like Cody as well. It's good that they've brought some people through by having this open challenge, and I think it's a decent idea. But at the same time, you just assume Cody's going to win.
Yeah.
Once you get a bit of a build to a title match, then you might think that he's more likely to lose, unless they're going to bring in someone, like completely unexpected that's a fairly big name. I thought they potentially might have done that with Zack Ryder, but he just turned up as Cody's friends, and they potentially wasted an opportunity with that. So,
I don't want to see Zack get added to the ever-growing Nightmare family either. Like, one of my criticisms of Cody is that he's always had Brandy and Arn Anderson and his brother, and he's always got too many people around him. I'd almost rather see him as a lone wolf kind of character. So to add Matt Cardona, to give him his real name now, I suppose, to that. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that he will turn on him, in the classic, I'm your friend, but of course, I'm jealous of the success you've had outside that. There's a storyline that could be told there. And I think just on that point, we need more single challengers for the title. I'm just going to read you off, if you don't mind, the list of the tag teams in AEW. And I spent some time compiling this, and I think it will shock you. So here we go. Page and Omega, the Hybrid 2, Gun Club, Reynolds and Silver from the Dark Order, Uno and Grayson also from the Dark Order, Private Party, Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, Butch and the Blade, Jurassic Express, SCU, The Initiative, which is Peter Avalon and Brandon Cutler, the Sex Gods, the Best Friends, Santana and Ortiz, the Super Bad Death Squad, I think that was their name, with Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian, the Nightmare Sisters now, Brandy and Ali, FTR, the Natural Nightmares, Dustin and QT, Sonny and Joey Janela, and I'm not even sure that's all of them. And I think that's my point. I know during the limited time they need to get people on TV, and tag team wrestling is a good way to do that. But my God, it made me think, how many people are actually left in that singles picture? Really, because you've got Omega out of the picture at the moment, you've got Hangman out of the picture, so you've got Darby Allin, Brian Cage, some of these guys maybe, but I think there's too many tag teams. It's one of the best things about AEW, but I'm shocked when I made that list about how much talent they're using on that. And they can't all compete for the same belt when there's one, so little time, and two, so few titles to compete for. So I just had to drop that in there. But yeah, it makes me wonder who will challenge. And, to go back to the point, I'm hoping that Matt Cardona will be a single challenger and not just be added to Cody's kind of, family.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there was a meme the other day. It was the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. So
I've not even thought about that. That's brilliant. I like that.
Let's hope they don't go down that route. So I totally agree. And one of the other points I wanted to bring up was the tag team division, because obviously from singles challenges perspective, it's not a good thing, but from a tag wrestling perspective, it's amazing. And I think potentially what they're doing with like FDR and the Bucks and stuff, where it's kind of like, one thing competes one week, one thing competes the next week, but then there's still a little bit of interaction between them. It's quite interesting. Like with SCU, they had Kazarian was watching a match, and because it is quite good the way they've used sort of like having the unused talent as the fans.
Oh yeah,
and they're often they're cutting to people and saying, "Oh look, this person's here, and it never seems to mean anything. Like Tony Blanchard's watching certain people, and like they make a big deal about it one week, and then it's kind of forgotten about.
Yeah.
So I'll come on to like that a little bit later on. The presentation issues that I kind of see with it, and what kind of like makes me a bit hesitant with AEW. But yeah, just to touch on the tag division, like FTR, the Bucks, the Lucha Brothers are just absolutely amazing. But I've seen a lot more of them in AEW than I had them previously.
Yeah,
and it's mind blowing, especially in the early days of AEW when they had like some of the tag matches they were putting on.
Oh yeah,
then it was actually looked like completely breathtaking. So how do you think they can use the tag division? Do you think they need to lose some teams?
It's a good question, because I'm not sure what you think, but the possibility of a trios championship would help separate that. You've got SCU, you've got Lucha Express. You've got several combinations of threes that you could use, to be honest, and Dark Order included. And I think that would maybe be wise. I'm also hesitant about. I don't like too many belts in any company, to be honest. I think again it kind of devalues it to have too many, but a trios belt might be an option, or you have some of them break away. Scorpio Sky would be a good person, I think, to take out of SCU. Having said that, I think the way Christopher Daniels seems to be backing off a lot more now, I think he's probably, at that point where he just needs to be around more. He's a great presence to have. So I think, one of the ways to get through that is just separate them out, take away some of the make them singles competitors, basically. And that in itself always has a feud inbuilt when they split up, like the Shield, for example, and I just think that there's too many. That it is literally one of the best things about AEW. And as you said, Matt, the matches they had, Young Bucks, Lucha Bros, that match was probably one of my all-time favorites. Incredible stuff. but it's just too much. And I think it's unrealistic for them all to be competing for that one belt, really. But as I say, it's probably just a way to get the talent on TV every week during that limited time slot, really. But yeah, it's a good question, and I'm not sure what the answer is, because I don't not want to see FTR each week, you know, and I do want to see the Young Bucks every week, and I want to see the Lucha Brothers every week. And it's almost like there's just too many, and I'd prefer just to see that top tier talent in and out, week in, week out. And, you know, even like Private Party in the early days, they were really well established, I thought. They did really well with them. And now they seem to have taken a backseat. And I think you've got AEW Dark, I guess, to showcase some of the talent, but I think that's my worry, that they're just too many tag teams to possibly focus on any one of them at any time. But yeah, the future is exciting, and I love what they do in FTR, Young Bucks and Hangman, and, you know, Kenny, that's a nice three-way kind of dance going on there. But I don't want to just see like random matches put together, like Butch and the Blade versus whoever. Like, I'm not really a fan of like 10-man, multi-man kind of matches just to kind of get that talent on screen. I think it's too much. It makes it less personal. So to answer your question, I'm not sure, but I do think, yeah, either a trios championship or just try and split away some of the breakout stars from these groups.
Yeah. To use a Tazism, to your point, about,
which I love.
The matches. Obviously, like this week had like a 10-person tag match.
Yeah.
Next week, they're advertising a 12-person tag match.
Yeah, right.
You're going to get 12 people on screen for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and, you know, so it's good that, like, obviously people, you know, you tick all the boxes that you've got the Bucks, you've got FDI, you've got all these people on there, but the reality of it is, it's like, you know, it's wasting all that talent by putting him in a match like that, which JR's probably going to ruin by calling it wrong anyway. So, but again, we'll come back to that in a little bit. So, you mentioned earlier as well about the women's division. So I think I agree with you. Like, Shida as champion is great. I think she's really good, but it's kind of the classic thing where it's like she's got the title. I think they've maybe lost their way with her a little bit.
Yeah.
How they're booking her, and you know, sometimes they're booking her as being like quite cocky and arrogant, and then there's like kind of like almost a heelish bit to it, and then she's back to smiley and everyone loves her, and I'm not sure they're doing the right things with some aspects in the women's division. They seem to be limited on talent as well. They are just bringing in a lot of people constantly just for one match here, one match there. So just like, what are your thoughts on this sort of the state of the women's division in AEW?
Yeah, I couldn't really agree more with you. One of the big things about AEW is for everyone, you know, and it's inclusive. And by having the transgender champion, Nyla Rose, you know, that was a big step towards that. They focused a lot on Joshi wrestling, you know, and you definitely had that in the early days, the kind of diversity shown through the women's division, different sizes, you know, different races. But I think now, like you said, that they don't really know what to do. I think it's a shame that you've got Britt Baker, who we're all a big fan of on, you know, Turnbuckle Arms, that she's probably the most compelling part of Dynamite in terms of the women, but she's not even wrestling, you know, and she's got a kind of storyline and promo. But I think Shida each week, I think, well, yeah, is there a storyline? You know, is it just for the belt? You know, I enjoyed Penelope Ford. I think she's a good talent, but I wasn't really invested in that feud at all, really. And I think that's their problem. They're one, yeah, they have an awful lot of women coming in, week out, but they don't seem to stick around. And two, I know they've got this women's tag tournament planned, so that's probably, again, a good chance to get everyone kind of highlighted. But I'm not sure, and it's a shame, really, because I think they started very strong with the women's division, and they certainly have the talented women there. But I have to say, yeah, in terms of competition, WWE, it does beat it, you know, in terms of its women's division. But someone made a good point I'd seen online, that it took them that long, WWE, to build that division. You know, it took them quite a while to get that talent all together. And I think AEW needs that time as well to pull that same kind of talent together. I think what you need is a series, a long feud between maybe two of the best, and yeah, maybe someone like a Britt Baker, you know, and then really kind of build it around these guys. I think by having the title switch that many times already as well, I feel like they're not sure who they want. as their kind of go-to right now. And Shida's a good choice. She certainly is, and she's won a lot of people over. Very talented. But yeah, who have they got to pair up against? And I think that's my concern. And obviously, Britt is a great choice, for that. But we'll have to wait for her to come back. So I think overall, everyone feels it's a little bit underwhelming when it promised so much, which is a real shame. But I'll see what they do with this tag team tournament. I do like a tag team tournament. I am a Teddy Long fan. I'm always a fan of any kind of tag team tournament or tag match being made, except for multi-man. But yeah, let's see where they go with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's like it does give them a good opportunity. That there's maybe an opportunity for her, like a breakout star or someone to kind of like really rise this up, especially while we're all waiting for Britt Baker to come back. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it looks like she's going to come back into a few big swole anyway, so there's still going to be a gap to fill. I'm not sure what time scale is for any of it, so but there's still potentially going to be a gap that needs filling in the interim. So again, to your point on Penelope Ford, I was really impressed with her match with Shida, because I didn't expect it to be that much that good. I didn't expect her to be that good, but I thought like her performance in that was really good. But then she's had that match and then gone again. So that's maybe somewhere where it lies. Whereas WWE is the flip side, where it's like everyone hangs around like a bad smell, and it's sort of like you think it's over and it's not, and it keeps going and going and going and going. And and I'm sure when Roman Reigns is back, he'll start feeling bad. So we haven't quite 36 months of it yet. So but so I mentioned a few times about sort of like commentary and some of the presentation sort of things. So obviously at the moment it's a little bit difficult because of the situation that they're putting their shows on. Although I would definitely say that they've done a really good job with quicker than WWE did as well. Yeah, with definitely. Talent around ringside, the way they've kind of utilized it and had Jericho on commentary for that period of time when no one else, like the others, weren't available. And I think that's, that was a breath of fresh air and made the shows even more exciting. But for me, like over the year that it's been going, that there's been so many presentation issues and they've kind of like missed the point. Like when the Dark Order came out to commentate this week, it was Anna Jay came out with them, and like you kind of saw it in the corner of a camera shot, and then someone mentioned, "Oh, look, there's someone there," and they're completely, so there's no impact to it whatsoever. If you remember the Butcher and the Blade when they debuted, they're like, "Oh, it's the Butcher." You expect to know who the hell they are, and I was watching it, and I don't know who these guys are. So
yeah.
So there's just a lot of stuff like that, and it was when Jack Swagger, when Jake Hager got suspended after his match with Cody for hitting the ref. It was overly planned because literally seconds later, 20 refs stormed the ring to come and rescue him. Yeah. And it's and there's just things like that where I know you suspend disbelief when you watch wrestling anyway.
Yeah.
There's so much the stuff where they kind of, I don't know if they overplan things or oversimplify things. I think we've mentioned in the past about JR. And JR is a legend, and he's the voice of wrestling for a generation. But I can't help but feel that he's way past his prime now. So it's really difficult listening to him sometimes. I'm not saying that Michael Cole's any better or anything like that, but it's I think it detracts from it. Where Schiavone, I still quite like. I probably like him more now than I used to. Mm-hmm. Excalibur's growing on me, but obviously his situation now is in question from some character stuff he did a few years ago. So it's but what are your feelings on sort of how they portray the product?
Yeah, Excalibur is very good. He's very knowledgeable. Tony Schiavone was the voice of WCW. He brings that feel back. It's TNT, and he was very much the voice of that for a long time. He's a good friend of Cody as well. I like him being there. But then what you don't need is another kind of older, friendly guy, which JR would be, and you're right. He was a legend, and I think that time has come and gone. The way he was treated with WWE and his various firings was quite disrespectful. So I am really glad that Cody and the Khans gave him that chance. And I am pleased that he's doing okay. But I think the role for him is away from the main commentary desk and maybe more the sit down style interviews that he does well. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen his sit down with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels when they had that. You know, that was a brilliant documentary, and that interview was very good. So yeah, I think maybe that's the role for JR. He does make too many mistakes. You know, you can't on live TV. Various names. You know, a lot of the time he's saying stuff when they think they're off air, and you catch a lot of that on Botchamania if you watch that. And yeah, he unfortunately he's just not sharp enough to be the voice of this supposedly kind of cutting edge alternative, you know. But yeah, I don't want to be too harsh on him because he still brings that drama, and he's still great at pointing out like stuff like, oh, you need to get on him quick after a big move, you need to get that cover down. But sometimes he's criticizing the talent on air as like he would do backstage maybe, you know. And I don't want to hear, no commentator, unless you're deliberately designed to be that way, should ever really be putting down the talent. They should be always putting them up. So yeah, the other guys do a great job. Say what you want about Taz, like I said, his commentary is hit and miss, but his promos are fantastic. You know, and so Taz is a little bit of light relief. He actually made me laugh this week though, his reactions to what was happening to Cage and absolute Ricky Starks, who I love, by the way. He's fantastic. Yeah, that was like, it generally made me laugh, like the shock and annoyance in his voice, and I think he's good as a color commentator, you know. So JR, sorry, maybe backstage for you, maybe doing something else, but yeah, your time is done there. They've certainly got enough talent up front to not need you, and I think Siobhan and Excalibur do a good job, to be honest. But yeah, so could be better on the commentary, but I do think they're knowledgeable and they present themselves very well. And I think they quite a good job of building up to drama, not to a Mario Ranello style Mamma Mia like moment, but they do enough. So yeah, I'm not too, you know, unhappy with that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think because they do switch it up from time to time, and like when they have like the guest commentators on, and like when Jericho, like we were saying about like building people up, putting people over, and like Jericho, even though he was still playing a character when he was on comms, the way he was putting people over and like explaining things and like little anecdotes about I think the one match, like the ref was checking someone's boots and he's like, yeah, I used to have a fork in my boot and this in my trunk and just come out with just really random stuff, but it adds to everything that's going on. So it's yeah, I agree with JR. I think there's still definitely a spot for him, but like maybe doing a bit more, you know, do something more like journalistic, basically, like, you know, the backstage stuff, and they could do so much with that as well. And you know, then they need to work on backstage segments, because like the FTR signing this week didn't really make any sense. Like what? No, it didn't. A couple of weeks ago when it was the Cody and Hager press conference,
yeah,
don't get what the whole point of that was. So maybe having like a sit down interview where you could like gimmick it or do whatever with it, you know, that'd make a lot more sense. You know, like, you know, if you think back to when JR got set on fire by Kane and stuff like that, you know, it's like, you know, you could do loads of stuff like that, and that plays into storylines rather than trying to set up these elaborate, you know, more deeper things. So, and the other thing as well, like to your point about Ricky Sparks.
Yeah, Stark. Yeah.
Listening to his little promo before the match on Wednesday. He just came across to me like Rocky Maivia.
Yeah.
And he's probably at the same point in his career that The Rock was at that point as well. And like just his swagger and his look and like the big gold chain and stuff like that. So, you know, it's good in-ring talent as well. You know, and if he's anywhere near that trajectory, you know, that's a pretty good starting place for him. So it's
yeah, I was going to say it was such a good promo, and he kept including Cage as well. He didn't, you know, he wanted to make sure, and I don't think Brian could keep up with him almost, like how good it was. That is a great comparison to a young Rock. He really, I can see it now so clearly, but you're dead on. He was fantastic and charismatic, and he got his points over. You know, he recapped what had happened. He recapped what was going to happen, and that's how you do a promo. You know, what's happened? What am I going to do to you now? What's going to happen as a result of that? You know, that's just basic stuff. And he's so young as well, but yeah, I really look forward to seeing more of him. And just that one promo, almost like you said, made him along with that match from Cody, you know. So suddenly I'm invested in this Team Taz, you know. So and yeah, a lot of that's to do with Starks. Like Cage is decent, you know. Don't get me wrong, he's a real presence, but Ricky straight away just stole that. You know, absolutely stole it. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, a little shout out for Ricky Starks.
Finished the match as well with the contacts board. That was a lot more brutal than I expected it to be. So
when they cut back to it, yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Okay. So we are getting close to running out of time because you know I keep going about time limits and stuff like that. So really, like the point to end on, I suppose, would be what's your AEW highlight so far, or a couple of highlights?
For me, the highlight is seeing new talent, because one of the biggest criticisms is that they just use an ex-WWE guide. But, you know, if I say MJF, Orange Cassidy, Jungle Boy, you know, and like these are the names, Darby Allin, that have excited me the most, Sammy Guerrero, and like, you know what I mean, I could keep going. So for me, the highlight has been seeing these really talented guys who maybe didn't have the audience before brought in, and kind of proving that they have done a good job of building new stars. Yes, it's not their time yet for the title, but that's fine. That's how it should be. You know, it took The Rock, as you know, many years to win, you know, his first championship, and like that's exactly the point. When the time is right, they will pull the trigger. So for me, it's been seeing that talent brought up, but really the true joy for me is having a true alternative. It's no secret that I'm not such a fan of WWE these days, and so AEW really has like brought back a lot of the joy of wrestling back to me, and it's given me a weekly source which I can easily get hold of and easily watch, you know, which is unlike New Japan, unfortunately, which I love, but it's not the easiest thing to stay up for. So for me, yeah, it's the combination of having that new talent showcased and having a regular alternative, and what they've done in a first year is incredible. And I think it's easy to criticize, but when you really think that they're less than a year old, they've done amazingly well, and they've certainly got WWE's attention.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point. You know, I've spoken quite a lot about Orange Cassidy. You know, someone's definitely a favorite. And I've not really heard of him before AEW. So there's a few other guys as well that, you know, because YouTube's such a vast expanse of information and content, that I've watched so much Orange Cassidy stuff, and Joey Janela I'd heard of before, but not really seen that much of it. So you know, you've got this access to go back and look into different people. And so to a similar point, but maybe the other end of the spectrum, is Kenny Omega. I knew of him, and you know, everyone speaks really highly of him. I'd seen a few little bits and pieces, but I'm not a big New Japan guy, so I'd not really seen that much. And then obviously, like, seeing him in AEW, to start with, it was a little bit underwhelming because this massive reputation, and it took me a little bit of time to warm to him. But I was like, you know, and watching Being the Elite helped as well, and so I'm kind of getting to know him a little bit more and everything. And so, like, he's someone that's really impressed me. Who, you know, I'm, you know, way behind the times on him probably compared to a lot of people, but it's like, you know, having the opportunity to see someone week in, week out is really impressive. So and then as another highlight and a point to kind of end on, which kind of ties in nicely to our planned theme for the next Turnbuckle Arms, Stadium Stampede. It took me a couple of weeks to get around to watching it after it aired, and everyone had gone on about it, and I'd heard all these different things and seen a few pictures and stuff. And I sat and watched it, absolutely blown away by it. It was amazing and completely and utterly ridiculous in so many ways, and that just shows a different way of doing things as well. That it's not just the like literally in the ring wrestling. And so that's probably one of my standout highlights so far for AEW. Again, it's not something you'd want to see all the time, but you know, if they did something like that again in 12 months' time or whatever, then you know, maybe with different factions, and you know, that'd be maybe a good thing to make an annual spectacular or something.
Absolutely. I think that's them using the situation to their advantage, and we've said the same about WWE putting a lot more cinematic matches out now. But you're right, it has to be reserved for something special as well. Like the Boneyard match, I think was a good example. But yeah, you're right. How could I forget a Stadium Stampede? What an epic encounter. A man rode a horse through a stadium, and you don't see that all the time. Jericho was a witch at some point, Matt Hardy would play 3 different versions of himself during the match, and it's just like, where do you even start trying to describe that match to someone? And I kind of feel a lot of that influence was from Jericho, because he's just so willing to play every side of his character, and all of them came out, I think, during that match. So yeah, big love for the Stadium Stampede, and I don't think it would have happened in any other time. Honestly, I think we've been blessed with a lot of these matches because of the situation, and like you said, to your point, AEW has really beaten WWE to like being creative and like using this situation, doing the best they can with it, even so much as the talent testing as well. So they have made the best of that. But you're right, Stadium Stampede is the ultimate example of innovation in this case.
So I'm pretty sure that's 30 minutes up, so that's swift half is gone. It's absolutely flown by. Thank you to Big Chocky T, obviously, for joining me for doing this. Thanks to Big Johnny, as always, for having our back and encouraging us and motivating us. Definitely go and check out our old stuff as well, but go and look at Wrestling with John's Facebook page and website as well. He's had a raft of amazing interviews in the last sort of like couple of months. They're well worth checking out, and whether it's people or you might get introduced to new promotions, there's tons and tons on there to kind of like get your eyes and ears into. That's us done. So Chris, thank you very much for joining me for this. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks' time for the next Turnbuckle Arms.
There's a new bar in town. Welcome to the Turnbuckle Arms, where the banter flows like wine and the topics are as fresh as an ice-cold pint. So pull up a chair, grab yourself a glass, and welcome your hosts, The Brood!